Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video you'll be seeing my 2024 ladder predictions in 2023, so they're probably not going to be the greatest predictions in itself, and I'll probably redo them depending on how preseason looks, etc. We still have a whole 3 months till the season starts. So that's about 2 months of players potentially getting injured, players looking better in preseason and stuff like that. But it's one of those videos that we'll look back on probably and I'll have about 10 teams wrong. I'll probably have the last placed, I'm pretty confident this year that my last placed team is not going to finish in the top 4 or whatever that it ended up being last year. But so before we get into this video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when my content comes out, and let's get into the video. So first of all, the bottom team I have for this year, the Wooden Spooners, no surprise, it's West Coast Eagles. They're 18th. I did a ladder prediction, and so you'll see sort of how I've got teams ranked, and I'll give the win-loss, etc. But I have West Coast actually scraping 3 wins this year. I can't tell you who they were against. Let's actually see if I can just do that. Have West Coast winning games against Essendon, as well as St Kilda. They scraped a game, and then winning one of the games against North Melbourne. So that will give you some reference points, but they still finish last by a game in my predictor. Just don't really see it as a year yet where the youngsters have had enough time to get in senior footy, and I think they're still 1 year away from a real push up. They still need Harley Reid, Jimby, Hewitt and stuff like that to really get another year in the league. As I think Harley Reid will be a quick guy to adapt and stuff like that and dominate in the league, but I still think he needs 12 months to do that. Now in 17th, I've got the North Melbourne Kangaroos. I have them 1 game better than the likes of the West Coast Eagles. I have them at 4 wins and 19 losses. They're 17th, and I think they'll be more competitive than they were last year in a lot of the stretches. But I do have them only beating Freo, and then also getting up against Essendon as well. And then also I had them getting up in a game against Port, which was probably a little bit off, but it was the Tassie game, so I could see them, Port not travelling well or something like that. And then I have them beating West Coast as well, and is that the 4 wins that I have them winning? I believe it is. So yeah, I think that they will they'll definitely, I think, struggle this year a little bit against the top tier teams, but I think they'll be really competitive against the likes of those sort of the teams I have between 9th and 15th. Then in 16th as well on 4 wins, I just don't trust what Essendon are going to do this year. So I have Essendon, and I know that's going to be a shock, and it was sort of a shock to me. But Essendon, I just think that they could easily lose those games against the bottom of the sort of those North Melbourne and those West Coasts, and I do think that they will not be competitive. So watch this be the team that jumps up. So this will just heads up, this will probably be the team that jumps up, knowing me. And I have them only beating Western Bulldogs, as well as I have them winning a game against GWS, which is a little bit shocking now looking at that, as well as beating West Coast. So they lost again to West Coast, beat West Coast, and then also winning against a game against Freo, and I think that's all the games that I have them winning. They will probably struggle, and I just don't rate their acquisitions too much. I think Goldie is a little bit too old and is only going to be there for basically a year, and then they'll really, really struggle. And then also I don't really rate Mackay that strongly, as well as their sort of, who did they bring in? Did they bring in Billings or something? No, Billings they brought in, was it Gresham or something? I don't really rate their forward acquisitions, and I think they'll really just struggle. Then in 15th, I have Fremantle. I think they will also really, really struggle. They just, they also have, them and West Coast have that massive travel as well that they got to do. They have 5 times the amount of travel as a lot of the Melbourne sides, which is customary every year, but I think that does weigh on how they perform a lot, especially travelling basically to and from Melbourne and Perth every single weekend, it seems like. But I think they'll struggle, and I think they won't be able to really put up a fight against a lot of the top tier teams, as I do have a very, very big split between sort of how this, I don't really have a big, looking at the ladder here, a big sort of fight for the top 8. It's more of a top sort of 7, and then 8th and 9th is separated by 2 games at the moment. So watch that be like the tightest one that we saw a couple of years ago with that Collingwood-Carlton game that was decided by a point. Watch that type of race for the 8 happen, but I don't have that currently. But yeah, I just think Freo with Pearce as captain, it doesn't really seem to gel that well, and I think they really need to just strip it and give it to Brayshaw, Sarong, give that midfield keys to Hayden Young, and really just let them be free in that midfield, as I think they do have a really good midfield with Darcy and Jackson as their rucks. I think their keys in the forward line are really good. I just really don't rate that back line, to be honest. Then you've got, for me, I've got 14th as Richmond. Will probably come as a little bit of a shock, to be honest. But I just don't think that they didn't get much, as they weren't able to in the draft, given their trades for Hopper and Taranto a year ago. But I just don't really value their, I guess, what they're doing at the moment. I don't think they've really filled in the holes at their key forward line. Lynch going down could basically derail their whole season. I think him coming back could give them a little bit of a punch early, and we'll see how that does in pre-season, as I'd probably do another ladder predictor, which will probably change a little bit. But I don't really see them doing much, and I don't think what they get Kaczynski, I don't think he'll do anything really to help them early, as I think he's still got another year or two to develop into an actual key forward if he does develop in time. But I do still think their midfield is pretty good, but also Nank is starting to wear down a little bit, so I don't think they have a good backup ruck there in Samson Wright. I don't think he's too good of a ruckman at the moment, so I think that they could get dominated in a couple of those games and really just struggle. In 13th, I've got Western Bulldogs, and I only have them winning 7 games. This could be a real struggle streak for Western Bulldogs, and I think that Beveridge gets the sack very early on here. So this is another team that I could absolutely see defy expectations, go like 16-7 or something like that, and just finish in like the top 4 or 5. But I just don't see it with Western Bulldogs, to be honest with you. Already stacking up the injuries. Coach has been in hot water for like 24, 36 months. They haven't looked the same since that grand final over in Perth against the Melbourne Demons after that sort of halftime. Was it halftime in that third quarter where I think they got 10 goals kicked on them or something like that? It was like 4 in 4 minutes or something. And since then, they haven't really looked like themselves. And that's why I have them in 13th. In 12th, I've got St Kilda, another team that I think will slip out of the 8. I have them out of the 8 at the moment, just because I don't really see how they can put up so much with so much pressure with their limited scoring potential. We've seen teams in the past, like the Swans were really good at it, but it was because they were able to actually put up huge scores on the other end when they could slingshot really well. And with St Kilda, it seems like they're able to really withstand the pressure, but they're not kicking those sort of 90, 100 scores regularly enough. I'm pretty sure, just going off the top of my head, that they were beating, I think, Freo like 64-41. They were winning against North Melbourne like 60-20 or something like that. They were kicking a lot of 60 scores to win and stuff like that, 60 and 70. And I just don't think with the firepower that a lot of teams have, like Kerno and stuff like that, McDonald should kick on. Eagle Hagan, even though he's playing for Western Bulldogs, he should kick on. You've got a lot of key forwards at the moment that are ready to really dominate. So even Brisbane Lions have got Hipwood and Danaher. We talked about Sydney. Collingwood don't really have the key forwards, but they've got such a big sort of small forwards. Carlton, we talked about Mackay and Kerno. Melbourne as well, they're trialling Petty, but they've also got Van Rooyen, etc. that's about to kick on. Adelaide have Tex. GWS have Hogan and also Cadman if he kicks on. Geelong have got Tommy Hawkins still kicking about, and Jazza Cameron. So yeah, I just see top teams dominating them with their key forwards, and that's why I have them in 12th. In 11th, Hawthorn, I think they will be one of the sides to really jump up. I have massive props on them, and I wouldn't be surprised. I have them for 11 wins. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a positive record. 11 and 12, I have them at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they go 12 and 11, 13 and 10. They may not make the 8 necessarily, but I think they're in that sort of 8 to 12 bracket, I reckon, where they'll finish. But I have high props on them, and I really like their midfield at the moment. I'm having a mental blank here. Warple, Newcomb, as well as Ward. I think McDonald, I believe. Connor McDonald, is it? I believe he's. If I just quickly look it up, actually here, I believe he's a McDonald here. Let me just check. Let me just do some quick checking here. McDonald, Connor McDonald, 20-year-old, I think he's really one that will stand out this year as a small forward. I think he could actually go All-Australian as a young guy. I think that's one of the big calls. I have high props on him. So I think he is one that could really lift for the Hawks. And I think Sicily down back, if he doesn't do something dumb and get suspended for 6 games, I think they could run it close with the top 8. I don't think they'll do much in the finals if they do get there, but I think that they'll run it close and be actually a really good side. Then in 10th, I've got the Gold Coast Suns, again missing the 8. I think it's probably 1 year too early. I do think that the 4 recruits that they got in the draft, or was it 5 in the end? They had Walter Reed, Graham, and also I'm missing another guy out there. I know they had another midfielder, smaller guy. I think that they're really good recruit. I think that Took, hopefully, if he has a full season, should do really well. I do like Flanders as well, and I think Rao could really step it up in the midfield. But I think they're just 1 year too early, and I think Blake Hardwick, I think he could get them into finals, and I think they're in that 8 to 11 sort of range, 8 to 12 range, but I just don't see them getting finals this year. I think they missed by a couple games, and I have them 11 and 12, but I do think that they could get a positive record and be 12 and 11 or 13 and 10 this year, but just miss out on the 8. Then my 9th place side is actually Port Adelaide. I have them missing the 8. Which is probably a big call, and looking at it now only on this screen, on this monitor on the side here, I think they're the only side that I have them actually missing the 8 from last year, or them and St Kilda. So I'm trying to figure out who actually missed the 8 that got in. So yeah, I actually have 2 sides coming into the 8, so that's actually relative, right around the range that you get. It's, I think, on average 3, but I think it's between 2 and 4 each year, sort of. So it's obviously not exactly 3, so 2 seems relatively fine, I think, for on average how many teams come in and out of the 8 on a yearly basis. But I have Port Adelaide. I just think that their midfield outside of Rosie and Butters is really, really weak at the moment. Boak shouldn't probably be playing another year, to be honest. I think Drew is really only there to tackle at the moment. I think their ruck line is one of the poorest in the league. Their forward line, I think their key forwards I don't really rate. They do have Jason Horne-Francis, who I think will pop off. So actually that midfield isn't the worst, but I do think that they need to find a 4th and 5th midfielder, which could be Ollie Wines refurbishing himself sort of after that down year, which was the post-Brownlow sort of down year that you usually get, so he's had a couple of down years actually now thinking about it. But so hopefully he's able to pick it up. But yeah, I just don't see them being there. I do think that Houston is one of the better defenders in the league, but outside of that, Aaliyah is good down there. So they have pieces, but I think that they had a honeymoon period there where they were winning, just like Collingwood were, a lot of close games. So I think that they could easily, like, if the Swans didn't have that injury crisis in that game, Swans would have won that game against Port Adelaide. I think there was another couple of teams that could have easily squeezed it over. Port, they had the Dan Houston goal at the death as well to beat the Bombers, was it? So they've had 3 or 4 games where they've won it very, very late, if not after the siren. So I think that could easily turn around, and with how close it is, 3 or 4 games turn around could easily have them in 4th or 5th in my ladder. Then squeezing into the 8, I have Geelong. I think they get a little bit lucky just with dropping down the schedule ladder last year and missing the 8. They get a better draw, and I think that just propels them up a little bit. I have them winning 14 games and 9 losses. So I think that they'll probably profit off that better draw. And so, yeah, I think that their midfield does need a little bit of work at the moment. But I think that just one last push of Dangerfield and stuff like that, and Hawkins and Jezza, if he's all fit, I think that forward line is way too dangerous not to at least get them into the 8. So we'll see how that goes. But I do have them in 8th place. In 7th place, I have GWS. And this is where it gets so close. GWS, if I tell you right now, in my ladder, they're 7th. They're 2 games and 2 percentage points. In my ladder, which is generally the ladder is a little bit closer with percentages than it will be, obviously, in the long term. But they're 2 wins and 2 percentage points out of 2nd place. That's how close this whole clump of teams is. And just how far and away I have them out from the rest of the comp. But GWS in 7th, and I can tell you right now, they would, with one more win, they'd be in 4th place. So even with just percentages alone, that's how close it is. But I think they will do really well. I think they're one of the teams that, and I did have GWS losing a couple of shock games as well, which will happen across the season. You'll have teams in the top 4 that lose shock games, etc. But with those shot games, I think I had them losing to... let me just check here. I had them losing a game to St Kilda, which they could easily pick that game up. I had them losing a game to Essendon, which they could easily pick that game back up. And I had them also losing a game to... Well, no one else actually really losing a tough game to, no. So those 2 games, win those 2, and they finish probably 3rd or 4th or something. So yeah, I have them. They're a winner percentage off 3rd. Like, it is so close. But I have them in 7th. In 6th, I actually have Adelaide, and this one is a tough one, but I actually have high hopes on Adelaide, and I think they could easily slip into the 4. That's how I think the fixtures could bless them and get them into 4th. Actually, I haven't looked at the fixture difficulty, but just based on the fact that they missed the 8, they should have an easier fixture. And I think that they were really competitive against the top sides. So if they only have to play 8 games against the top 6 or so, if they have to play 10 games against the top 8 outside of themselves, I think they could really scrape 5-5 record and then just batter everyone, all the other bottom sides, which could happen. And they'll finish. I have them currently 16-7. But they're a win outside of they're a win outside of 4th or something like that. Yeah, 4th. They're a win outside of 4th. So even with percentages, they're just a straight win outside of 4th. So yeah, I could see them scraping into the 4 and having a big jump. But I have really high hopes on Adelaide. Then in 5th place, I have Melbourne. I just think if Grundy is back and that sort of is settled down, as well as Petty being fit, I think that they'll be fine. And I think you'll find that they'll still be a massive regular season team. They do it every year, so I think that they'll clock together a decent side and a decent ladder position in 5th. I have them at 17-6, so they're a win off, basically a win and a little bit of percentage off of 2nd place. Then in 4th place, I have Carlton, and I have really high hopes. I think if Mackay can get his shooting boots back on, which is obviously a massive talking point in itself, I think that Carlton could finish as high as... Well, they could almost finish 2nd, to be honest with you, 2nd or 1st. But I think they will finish 2nd as a top if Mackay gets his shooting boots on. And yeah, so I think that they're going to be huge this year, and I think that Kerno's going to be in for another huge year. He could go back to back in the Coleman quite easily. Then in 3rd place, I'm not going to be that dumb this year and let biases get too much in the way of it. I have Collingwood, and I think that they will slow down a little bit. I have them winning 17 wins, 6 losses. I think that they will probably try and taper a little bit in the off-season when they know... I mean, not in the off-season, in the actual season, when they know that they've gotten into the top 4, and just try and taper a little bit for those easier games, as they're really just trying to be that team that gets into the top 4 and then just does it from there. So I have them finishing 3rd at the moment on 17-6, and yeah, I just really like their whole young, well, not young, but they're really old sort of guys in Steele, Sidebottom, and also Pendlebury. I think that they're still going at elite levels. They're playing like they're 6 or 7 years younger than they actually are, and they're a serious shout for going back to back. To be honest, I do think McStay does injury him out for the whole season, does leave them a little bit weak up forward, which could be their ultimate downfall, is their key position players at this point in time. But Jeremy Howe has done a little bit up forward, so I think he could obviously do something there. And I do think that they have potentially Ash Johnson could kick on this year. In second, probably a little bit biased, a win or two bias in the Swans' favour, but I have the Sydney Swans. 18-5 record. They could easily be a 16-7 or a 17-win team. I just think if you look at the numbers here with Brodie Grundy, I think the Swans' clearance numbers, he basically improves them by 8 to 10% just on the numbers alone. Hickey had a down year, and Brodie Grundy's down year with Melbourne was still 8 to 10% better than what I believe Hickey was doing. And also him being a solo ruck should help his numbers out a lot. And if we go back to his Collingwood days, even though I don't think we'll be a little bit conservative there, he could easily help the Swans get to just straight even clearances, and that's all that they need, as they're so much better on the outside compared to a lot of other teams. And I think Taylor Adams will also help that midfield mix a little bit. It does suck Mills going down, but I think that's probably the one area that they could have someone go down. But the only area of concern is that half-back line, and they do need some development out of probably Caleb Mitchell and Vickery, as well, as those guys do need to come on in the next couple of years. But they do have, I think, Carmichael in the academy, who's going to come in the next 12, 24 months and hopefully provide a role off that half-back line, as that is the aging area that the Swans really haven't fixed yet. But I really do like the mix of the Swans and their utility and their versatility with the way that they can have so many guys run through that midfield. And with Buddy gone now, I think it does open up for Logan McDonald to really push on, and hopefully we can sign him on, I guess. But that leaves the number one team, the minor premiership, Brisbane Lions. I think I had them almost winning out from home or something. They may have dropped one game at home, but I don't think I had them dropping a game. Looking quickly through here, I don't have them dropping a game at the Gabba. So that, I think, just shows that they're going to be one that if they go 11-0 at the Gabba, it's going to be so hard to catch them, because that's 11 wins. That's pretty much final secured, and all they got to do is win. Well, I have them 8-4 on the road, which is still a decent effort, but that is 8-4 on the road is sort of that sort of 5th or 6th ranked team, but they have a home fortress, which makes them the number one team. It's just all about, for them, how are they going to perform away from home in the final series. Potentially a lot of these teams are we've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 MCG sides, so 4 MCG sides should be interesting. It's actually only 3, but then you have Geelong as well, so 4 Melbourne sides, but 3 MCG sides should be tough for them, especially given that I have 3 of the top 5 being MCG sides, so they're probably going to have to face a team at the MCG at some point, and if they don't finish top, then they're potentially playing an MCG side and then into another MCG side, etc., along in 2 of their games. So they really could struggle. But that pretty much is the video. Hopefully this video comes out on Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on how long it takes to edit all the sort of graphics together. But hopefully you will get some good graphics there. And hopefully on the side over here somewhere, I'll quickly flash up the ladder that I have at the moment. Obviously it's not even basically preseason yet, so this will change. It's not, if it's spot on, then I deserve like $10 million for getting that spot on, even just the wins and losses, because it's going to be so off. But that's sort of my 2023 ladder prediction for 2024, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.